talk about recovery. Hey guys, it's Dave, and I want to spend some time today and talk about recovering from your workouts, in particular how and when to use the P90X results and recovery formula, and also when not to use it. I'm going to cover a ton of ground today. I've tried to keep this video under 5 minutes, and it's impossible. So at the outset, I just want to encourage you to contact me for more information. My email address is here on the screen. I have some additional information, some videos you can watch that are going to explain some of the concepts I'm going to talk about in greater depth. So let's talk a little bit about my evolution with this. I've been a little gun shy about using recovery formula for the last couple of years because I'm a big believer in the primal blueprint, paleo theory, whatever you want to talk about, which talks about controlling your intake of carbs and controlling your intake of sugar in order to control insulin production in your body is kind of one of the major theories, and it's been really effective for me. So when I look at something like recovery formula, I see 26 grams of sugars, 40 grams total carbs. I know they're high glycemic index carbs because they're dextrose, and that's something I'm kind of going to shy away from. But last week, I had the good fortune to go with Beachbody on the Chairman's Adventure, which was a trip that they organized for the top 10 people in the company for 2010. And we went on a week-long cycling trip in the south of France, which was totally amazing. If you want to check it out, the information is all on our blog. I've got like pictures and video of the crazy hotel rooms we stayed in and everything. But one of the coolest things about that trip was that Steve Edwards was there. So Steve Edwards, for those of you who don't know, is the director of results at Beachbody. And what that really means is Steve makes sure that all the programs work together. Okay, so Shaun T comes up with Insanity. Steve's the guy who helps him with the sequencing of it, putting it all together. Steve also is really, really instrumental in the nutritional side of things. And he's really the guy who pretty much put together the P90X nutrition guide, which is a multi-phase diet that I'm going to talk about a little bit with reference to this. So, first thing to understand is the metabolic process that your body undergoes when you take in a high glycemic index sugar. What happens is your body sees your blood sugar spike. That's a toxic condition, okay? So if your blood sugar isn't under control, you could die. So we have this thing called insulin, which is a hormone. What insulin essentially does, a little more complicated than this, but what insulin essentially does is it takes these sugars and converts them into glycogen, which your body can then process and absorb and use and is not toxic. So the question is, once it's converted that, where is it going to put this glycogen that it's created? Well, there's really only a couple different places it can go. The place it's supposed to be is in your muscles and your liver. So if you've had a hard workout and you've expended your glycogen, which again I'll talk about in a minute, it's going to go into your muscles and your liver, which is really where it belongs because that's where you can tap into it and where you're going to need it during those high exertion workouts. If you've been sitting on the couch flipping channels all day and you take something like this, or I don't know, a 64-ounce soda, it's going to go into your fat cells because your glycogen muscles, the glycogen in your muscles and the liver is full. There's no more room there. If you have limited storage capacity, plenty of room in the fat cells. That's where it ends up going. It's not supposed to be there. And that, my friends, is one of the reasons, if not the primary reason, that America is in a big obesity crisis. So that's the first thing to understand. The next thing to understand is, when do you burn through the glycogen in your muscles? Okay? So this is where having a heart rate monitor will really, really help you. If you do not work out with a heart rate monitor, I highly recommend that you do so. Heart rate monitor is going to essentially tell you what your heart rate is, and then you need to figure out, where am I in an aerobic state and where am I in an anaerobic state. Okay, so when you're in an aerobic state, you're working out at a level of exertion. So I'll just give you my numbers. These are my numbers. I've been in endurance sports for a few years now, and I've been able to increase my anaerobic threshold to the point where I go from aerobic to anaerobic. So my numbers may seem a little bit high, and if you're new to working out, your numbers are not going to be like this. You need to figure out what yours are. And again, you can contact me, I'll help you with that. So for me, between about 130 and about 160 beats per minute is an aerobic threshold, is an aerobic workout for me. So I'm burning primarily fat during that time. When your body's in an aerobic state, you're burning primarily fat. You're not really burning that much glycogen. You're burning a little bit, but not that much glycogen. Now, when I get up above 160, in particular like in the 170 to 175 range, I can go for quite a while like that, but that's an anaerobic state for me. I know I'm burning through the glycogen in my muscles, and if I'm going to be going longer than about an hour, which is about how much glycogen you have in your muscles, I have about an hour's worth of supply, I know I'm going to have to take on additional fuel and try to replace that glycogen as I go, okay? So, what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for recovery formula? Well, what it means is that if you're working out at a lower intensity level, you're probably burning fat, which is a good thing for a lot of people. Get in that fat burning zone, as they call it. But you're probably not a great candidate for results in recovery formula. Now, if you're doing plyometrics and you're pegging your heart rate every single time, or you're doing insanity and you're leaning over grabbing your shorts because you're going to die during most of that workout, you are probably working at an anaerobic level. You're probably roasting the glycogen in your muscles, and this becomes a very good product for you. So now, let's talk a little bit about the P90X nutrition guide, because I thought this was a really interesting discussion that I had with Steve about, not just this recovery formula issue, but also about the P90X nutrition guide. So if you've read the guide or done it or know how it works, you basically start out in phase 1 with very few carbs. At phase 2, there's more carbs, and phase 3 is a fairly high carb diet. I don't move a whole lot of people to phase 3. For me, that level of carbs is really associated with more like cycling and triathlon and some of the more endurance stuff that I do. But let me explain to you why it's structured that way, and I think this is super, super interesting. So what Steve tells me is, look, P90X is a graduate level program, but we know that there are an awful lot of people who, when they first pick up the P90X program, it's really the first serious workout program they've ever taken on. So at that point, they're doing the same workouts, but at a lower intensity. Okay, which means, again, they're probably staying in that aerobic zone versus the anaerobic zone, which means they're burning more fat and less glycogen. Well, if they're burning more fat and less glycogen, what do they need less of? Carbs. So if you look at phase 1 of the P90X nutrition guide, it's designed to understand that. And it's designed to say, we know you're not going to burn through as much glycogen as somebody who's been doing P90X for 45 days, 60 days, is because you're going to be working at a lower intensity level, because for you to do this extremely hard workout for an hour, basically that's what it is, you're going to have to operate at a lower intensity level because you're simply not going to have the cardiovascular strength to keep up. Okay? But we also know that when you get towards the end of P90X, you might be going anaerobic doing a workout like chest and back, which in the beginning seems like it's just kind of a slow workout. You're not really operating at a high heart rate level. Well, you get to the point where you're moving through those workouts more quickly, and you're pushing harder and harder, you're doing them faster, you're doing your push-ups faster, your heart rate is getting up there, you're burning more glycogen, you're working harder. That requires additional carbohydrates. Okay, so you have to kind of assess where you're at and where your fitness level is, and whether you're operating at an aerobic level or an anaerobic level during your workouts. How long have you been doing that? Did you earn your recovery formula is really the question that you need to ask. So it's not a bad thing for you to have worked out at a lower intensity level. If you've got a lot of fat to lose, that may be a good thing. But it's probably means you're not a good candidate for recovery formula yet. Now, if you're working at a high intensity level, a lot of the workouts I'll do intervals on the bike, for example. So I'll go all out for half a mile or a full mile, just as hard as I can go. My heart rate gets up to about 187. I know I'm burning through all the glycogen in my muscles. I am real focused on recovery. I've been doing that with things like fruit, because I feel like better about eating fruit than I do about charging down a bunch of sugars. But after talking to Steve, I've really changed my tune on that. I've done 3 workouts since I've been back from France. 2 of them were these interval type rides that I'm talking about, and the other one was pure cardio from Insanity. Both times kept an eye on my heart rate. At the end, I'm able to tell, like, when am I in my zone, so I know where my zones are at. I know when I'm outside that aerobic zone and where I'm going anaerobic, which is a goal for me because I really want to push hard during these workouts because I want to keep moving that threshold up. So I know where I'm at during my workouts, and I know at the end whether I've earned something like this or not. After yoga, I'm not taking this. Yoga is a hard workout. It's a long workout. I'm definitely burning a lot of fat. I'm definitely working hard, but I'm not working at an anaerobic level to the extent that I think I'm really going to deserve something like a recovery formula. So, again, I have covered a ton of ground here. I am happy to respond to questions, help you understand either the metabolic process associated with insulin, help you calculate your heart rate, or help you understand really any of these issues better. Please just shoot me an email. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Again, info@thefitclubnetwork is my email address. I hope you guys have found this information helpful, and I hope that you'll consider whether you're a good candidate for a recovery formula or not, and if you are, let me know, and you can always get it from us as well. All right, guys, thanks a bunch. Have a great day. Bye.